The summer of 2008 was a kaleidoscope of teenage rebellion in our small Louisiana town. The high school hallways buzzed with the clatter of lockers, the hum of gossip, and the restless energy of youth. I was 16, a shy junior navigating the chaos my world shaped by textbooks and Friday night football games. Among the crowd was Lucas, a sophomore who burned brighter than the rest. He was chaos incarnate, tall, lanky, with a grin that dared the world to challenge him. His white baseball cap, always tilted backward, was his crown, a symbol of his defiance. "Spilled my deakery, teach," he'd drawl, sauntering into English class late, his voice a mix of mockery and charm. Lucas was the kid who revved his beat-up Subaru in the parking lot, who scoffed at detention, who sulked when he didn't make starting quarterback. That cap was his signature, as much a part of him as his reckless laugh. But by the fall of 2009, Lucas was gone. The school felt hollow without his presence, his absence a quiet ache in the corridors. Whispers spread like wildfire. He'd been at a party by the river, a fishing spot 30 miles out, a place where kids drank cheap beer and tested their limits. The stories were jagged, incomplete. Some said he'd fought a guy who smashed a bottle over his head, blood mixing with the muddy current. Others swore his own brother, jealous and drunk, had pushed him into the river's embrace. The water, wide and relentless, claimed him, leaving no trace, no body, no closure, just a yearbook page with his photo, that cap tilted just so, and a town that moved on. Over time, Lucas faded into a story we told over campfires, a name half forgotten. Who was that kid who drowned? 15 years passed, and life pulled me away. College, a job, a house with a mortgage. But Lucas lingered in the corners of my mind, a ghost of youth I couldn't shake. In 2023, I met a retired detective named Amos at a diner, his face carved with lines of hard-earned wisdom. Over greasy fries, I mentioned Lucas, and his eyes darkened. He'd led the investigation, chasing leads that crumbled like dust. "Kid was reckless," Amos said, stirring his coffee. "Paid a homeless guy to buy beer, partied by the river. Got drunk, fell in, swept to the Gulf." He described Lucas's parents, dad a washed-up jock, mom a former beauty queen, stuck in their high school glory, raising a son who mirrored their unfulfilled dreams. The white cap, the swagger, it all made sense. Lucas was their echo, chasing a life that was never his. That conversation stirred something restless in me, a need to confront the past. So, one October evening, I drove to the fishing spot, the river's pull stronger than my better judgment. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in hues of amber and bruised purple. The air carried the sharp tang of pine and wet earth, the river's low murmur a constant companion. I parked my truck in the gravel lot, the only vehicle for miles, and set up my fishing rod, the ritual grounding me against the creeping dusk. The trees loomed, their branches clawing at the fading light, and a chill settled in my bones, unseasonal and sharp. Focus on the fish, I told myself, an embedded command to quiet the unease, but the silence felt alive, watching. As twilight deepened, I packed my gear, the lot now shrouded in shadow. The river's song grew louder, almost mocking, as I stowed my rod in the truck bed. That's when I saw it, a glint among the trees, a white cap hanging on a low branch, its fabric faded but unmistakable. My heart lurched, a cold fist tightening in my chest. It's just lost gear, I reasoned, a common sight at fishing holes. But the cap was too familiar, its tilt too precise, like a memory plucked from 2008. I flipped on my high beams, the light piercing the woods, and my breath caught. There, among the trees, stood a figure, tall, lanky, wearing that white cap, tilted backward just like Lucas used to wear it. His face was Lucas's, same sharp jaw, same defiant posture, but frozen at 16, untouched by time. His eyes met mine, unblinking, and I swear they burned with a quiet fury, a knowing that pinned me in place. The air thickened, the river's murmur now a low, insistent hum, like a warning I couldn't heed. My hands shook, gripping the steering wheel, my pulse a deafening roar. "This isn't him," I whispered, but the words felt fragile, swallowed by the night. I remembered a story my grandmother told me when I was young, a nested tale about spirits bound to places of tragedy. "They linger where they died," she'd said, her voice heavy with old fears, waiting for someone to bear witness. That story anchored me now, making Lucas's presence feel not just real but fated, as if the river had summoned me to face him. The cap, the eyes, the silence, they were a debt, a reckoning I hadn't chosen. "Run," my mind screamed, a command that seized my limbs. I slammed the truck into gear, tires spitting gravel as I tore away, the cap and figure fading in the rear view mirror. My vision blurred, my heart pounding so hard it hurt, the road a tunnel of fear. I didn't stop until I reached town, the neon glow of a gas station anchoring me to reality. I sat in the parking lot, hands trembling, Lucas's eyes etched into my mind, as vivid as the day he'd walked into class, cap tilted, grin wide. The next day, I called friends who fished that spot, my voice unsteady as I asked if they'd seen anything, a cap, a figure, anything. Their laughter stung, their answers empty. "Just trees, man." No one had seen what I had, and their dismissal only deepened my dread. I haven't gone back to that river, and I never will, not when the sun dips below the hills. The water holds too many secrets, and that cap, whether it was Lucas or something wearing his face, feels like a warning I can't ignore. But the fear didn't end there. A week later, I was cleaning my truck, the memory of that night still raw. In the back seat, tucked under a jacket, I found a folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I opened it. A crude sketch of a white cap, drawn in black ink with two eyes staring from beneath the brim. I don't know how it got there, and I don't want to. I burned it that night, the flames curling around those eyes. But the image lingers, a ghost that follows me still. Some ghosts don't need to scream to haunt you. They just watch, waiting, wearing the face of someone you thought you'd forgotten, until the past claims you again. Have you ever stared into the stars, their ancient light a promise of eternity, only to feel a colder gaze clawing at your soul from the shadows below? That's what I learned one night, alone on a soccer field, where the heavens were my sanctuary, until a voice tore through the dark, calling my name. It was November 2021 in Ghana, North Carolina, a warm night under a full moon that bathed the world in a silver shroud. At 22, I was a dreamer, my telescope a lifeline to the cosmos, the empty field a refuge from a life that felt like a cage. But that night, something found me. A thing that wore a guard's uniform but carried the weight of something ancient, its smile a wound that bled darkness into my world. Ghana was a sleepy town, its streets weaving through fields and forests, heavy with whispers of the past. The locals spoke of strange things, lights dancing in the woods, voices echoing where no one stood, tales of a field where the night held its breath. The soccer field by my neighborhood was my haven, a wide, open stage where the stars sang to me alone. I'd been coming here since I was a kid, escaping the weight of a fractured home, finding solace in the constellations. That night, the moon was a lantern, its light pooling on the grass, casting the goalposts as skeletal guardians against a sky that seemed to watch. The air was thick, charged with an unseen pulse, as if the earth itself was awake, waiting. I set up my telescope with practiced ease, the ritual a balm for my restless mind. Tripod locked, lens aligned, the universe unfolding in a tapestry of light. For 20 minutes I was untethered, floating among the stars, my back to the world, unaware of the shadows curling closer. My love for the night sky came from my grandfather, who'd taught me to read the stars, his stories of celestial myths filling my childhood with wonder. But he'd warned me too, of nights when the dark felt alive, when the stars seemed to turn away. I'd laughed then, a boy too young to believe. Now, alone on that field, I wished I'd listened. Then it came, a flicker of light at the field's edge, like a spark born and snuffed in a single breath. I turned, expecting a neighbor's flashlight or a car's glow, but it was a guard's patrol beam, sweeping the perimeter with cold precision. I shrugged, assuming routine, and returned to my stars. But the night shifted, a heaviness settling like fog, as if the darkness had grown teeth. A sound followed, not human, not animal. A deep guttural hum like a chord struck in the earth's molten heart. My pulse surged, a primal warning searing my veins, urging me to flee. I glanced back, the guard's light gone, the field drowned. In shadow save for the moon's ghostly caress. What a wonderful night, isn't it? The voice sliced through the silence, layered, as if a chorus of tongues spoke in discord, curious yet dripping with malice. I spun, and there it stood, a figure in a guard's uniform, rigid as a monument, feet pressed together, arms stiff. The moonlight betrayed its horror. Skin black as a void, swallowing light, no face but a smile, wide and jagged, like a tear in the fabric of reality. Its uniform was tattered, fraying at the edges, as if it had clawed its way from some forgotten place. "What's your name?" it asked, the words a hook sinking into my chest, each syllable a blade. Jackson," I stammered, a lie to shield my soul, my hands fumbling to pack my telescope. It tilted its head, the smile stretching, revealing teeth that gleamed with an unholy light. No eyes, no trace of life. My spine turned to ice, a primal terror chaining my bones as it spoke again. "Nice to meet you, Jackson. I'm Mike," it said. The name a blasphemy, its voice slipping into a growl that echoed from no mortal throat. I stepped toward the neighborhood, my bag slung over my shoulder. But as I passed, a stench hit me. Sulfur, thick and choking like the breath of a grave opened wide. "Have a wonderful night, Jackson," it rasped, the words dissolving into a hiss that clawed at my mind, a sound that wasn't meant for this world. I walked faster, heart hammering, glancing back to see it standing still, that smile glowing. Under the moon, a predator's vow etched in the night. I reached the streetlights, their orange glow a frail sanctuary, and stopped, watching the field from afar. The thing didn't follow, but its presence lingered, a weight in my lungs, a splinter in my soul. I stood there, trembling, the telescope heavy in my hands, a relic of a peace I'd never reclaim. Months before, I'd felt something similar, a night when the stars seemed dim, a hum in the air I'd dismissed as wind. Now I knew better. The field wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Mike, to the thing that wore a smile like a weapon. Months later, I returned to the neighborhood office petting the resident cat, its warmth a faint anchor to reality. A real guard stopped by, his face kind but weary. I asked if a Mike worked there last November. His eyes darkened, his confusion a mirror of my dread, as he checked and found no record. "No one named Mike," he said, his voice tight, as if he sensed the shadow we'd both grazed. He shared a tale then, of a night he'd felt watched, a hum in the dark he couldn't place, a chill that drove him to pray. We stood in silence, two souls bound by a fear we couldn't name, knowing something had crossed our paths that defied the light. The town whispers now, tales of others who've seen it. A guard who isn't, a smile that hunts, a hum that lingers in the bones. They say the field was built over something old, something that never left its hunger waking under the moon. Years later, that smile haunts me, a scar on my soul, flashing in every shadow, every silent night. I don't stargaze anymore. Not there, not anywhere. The telescope gathers dust, a monument to a dream I buried. My neighbors avoid the field now, their eyes darting to the dark, as if they feel it too. What was Mike, and why did it choose me? The question is a chain, binding me to a terror I can't unlearn, a truth I'll never grasp. The house was a relic of my family's past, its weathered walls steeped in memories that felt alive, whispering through the creaks of its old bones. I was a child when we moved in, too young to question the shadows that clung to the corners, but old enough to feel their weight. It had been my great-grandparents' home, then my grandmother's, a place woven into our blood, yet something else lived there too. Something that knew my voice, my fears, and followed me long after I left. As a toddler, I didn't notice the house's secrets. Its sagging porch, ivy-choked walls, and dim hallways were just home, a maze where I played and dreamed. But one night when I was 4, I slept at my aunt's, my brother at his uncle's, leaving my parents alone in the house. They told me later, their voices hushed, how they'd heard me calling from the upstairs bedroom, my small voice pleading, "Mom, Mom," over and over, echoing down the staircase. They rushed up, hearts pounding, only to find the room empty, the house silent. They checked outside, thinking a neighbor's child might be playing tricks, but the night was still, the nearby family speaking a language that didn't use mom. Have you ever heard your own voice call from a place you're not? That was the first sign, a crack in the house's facade, revealing something that could mimic me, something that wanted to be heard. I grew up in that house, its presence a constant hum beneath my days. By 9, I was unraveling, puberty and the house's weight pressing me into darkness. In my upstairs room, split by a curtain to separate my sister's crib, I wrestled with thoughts no child should have, ideas of escape, of floating away. One night, alone with my flip phone's glow, I sat on my bed, the room heavy with silence. What if you felt a room turn against you, its air thickening with intent? The curtains swayed, though no breeze stirred, and then a towel, folded on a shelf, lifted, soaring across the room to strike the wall. I froze, my pulse a drum in my ears. The towel crumpled on the floor like a warning. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, my eyes locked on the empty space where it had come from. That room became a place I avoided, its door a portal I feared to cross. The house wasn't done with me. At 11, I fled the upstairs, claiming the basement as my own, a damp, shadowed space with a folding cot and an old TV. I thought it would be my refuge, but the darkness there was thicker, alive with eyes I couldn't see. Sleep can become a battlefield when a house watches you. Night after night, I woke paralyzed, my body pinned to the cot, a weight pressing on my chest. Shadows moved in the corners, formless but deliberate, their gaze a cold blade against my skin. Footsteps echoed, heavy and deliberate, pacing the concrete floor, doors shifting in their frames though no one was there. My sister heard them too, her small voice trembling as she asked who was running in the dark. We'd lie awake, clutching blankets, waiting for the house to grow still, but it never did. Other moments haunt me, fragments of a childhood warped by the house's will. When I was 10, my aunt's boyfriend's brother died on nearby train tracks, his life snuffed out under the scream of a locomotive. That night I slept in the living room, waking at dawn to find myself standing on tiptoes, staring through the window by the fireplace. The sky was a bruise of stars and sunrise, the train's distant wail slicing the air. I didn't know he was gone until my mother told me, her face pale, but I felt it then. A connection, as if the house had pulled me to that window to witness his passing. What does it mean when a house knows more than you do? Before we moved out just before middle school, I hid a school photo in the baseboards of the upstairs staircase, a small act of defiance, as if leaving a piece of myself could quiet the house. It didn't. Decades later, the house is a specter that stalks my dreams. I'm in my 30s now, long gone from that place, but its grip is unrelenting. Nightmares dragged me back, the hallways stretching endlessly, the ivy outside my old window crawling like veins. In the most vivid dream, a voice, low, guttural, not human, commanded me to paint a picture. The upstairs window, framed in green ivy, with myself standing behind the glass, staring out. I woke trembling, the urge to paint it burning in my chest, but my husband's warning stopped me. "It's a trap," he said, his voice firm, and I knew he was right. A brushstroke could summon something I couldn't banish. The house has never left me. My mother speaks of footsteps she heard. My grandmother of shadows she saw as a girl. We all carried its mark, a shared wound that time can't heal. I drive past sometimes, the ivy still choking the walls, the windows dark but watchful. I don't stop, but I feel it. An echo that never fades, a house that knows my voice, waiting for me to answer its call. His eyes were the first thing I saw, two hollow voids framed by dark circles, staring through the basement window like they could see into my soul. I was only 6, crouched on the cold concrete floor with my toys. But in that moment, the world stopped. The glass between us felt paper thin, the darkness outside a living thing pressing against it. His gaze held me, unblinking, and I knew even then that some things you see can never be unseen. It was 2011, the crisp air of a late October evening seeping through the cracks of our village home. Halloween break had just begun, and I was reveling in the freedom of playing past dinner, my parents' voices a distant hum from the kitchen above. Our house sat at the edge of a sprawling field, unfenced, a shortcut for wanderers heading to the woods beyond. It wasn't unusual to see strangers cutting through our garden, their silhouettes fleeting in the dusk. But that night, as the sky turned black and the stars hid behind clouds, I was alone in the basement, a cavern of shadows lit only by a single flickering bulb. The air was thick with the scent of dust and oil, the boiler room door firmly shut to keep the fuels sharp. Tangat by, I sat cross-legged on the concrete, my plastic kitchen set spread before me, serving imaginary meals to invisible guests in my pretend restaurant. The basement was my playground, a maze of old boxes and forgotten furniture, but it always felt like a world apart, cut off from the warmth of the house above. I arranged a tiny plate, humming a tune, when a faint sound broke the stillness, a low, rhythmic thump from the boiler room behind me. My hands paused, the plastic fork hovering mid-air. The boiler often made noises, a steady heartbeat of the house. So I shook off the unease and continued playing, my laughter echoing softly in the dim space. But the air grew heavier, the bulb overhead flickering as if struggling to stay alive. Another sound came, sharper this time, like something brushing against the wall. I turned, my heart skipping, expecting to see the boiler room door ajar. But it was closed, its surface unyielding. A chill crept up my spine. A whisper of something wrong, but I forced myself to focus on my game, piling plastic vegetables onto a plate as if they could shield me from the growing dread. Then it came. A sharp tap against the window facing me. A small rectangle of glass high on the wall, its iron bars casting thin shadows across the floor. My head snapped up, my breath catching in my throat. Feel his gaze pinning you, don't you? The thought slithered into my mind as I saw him. Man. His face pressed close to the glass, his head wedged between the bars. He wore a faded blue cap, a 90s Nike jacket frayed at the sleeves, and a 2-day beard that framed a face etched with exhaustion. Dark circles carved deep hollows under his eyes, making them look like endless pits, unblinking, fixed on me. His expression was blank, a mask that hid whatever intent lay beneath, and yet it held me, a predator's stare that stripped away the safety of my imaginary world. I froze, my tiny body trembling, unable to scream, unable to move. As seconds stretched into an eternity, I'd heard whispers in the village, tales the older kids told around bonfires, stories of strangers who roamed the fields at night, men with hollow eyes who watched from the shadows, searching for something or someone. They called them drifters, ghosts of the living, lost to the woods in the dark. I'd always thought they were just stories, meant to scare. But now, with that man at my window, the tales felt like prophecies. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat as I broke free from his gaze. I scrambled to my feet, my toys scattering across the floor, and ran for the stairs, my small legs shaking with each step. The bulb flickered again, casting jagged shadows that seemed to chase me, the air thick with a presence I couldn't see but felt in every fiber of my being. I burst into the kitchen, my voice a desperate cry as I told my parents what I'd seen. My father, Henry, didn't hesitate. He grabbed a hammer from the drawer, his face hardening as he stormed downstairs. My mother, Elise, pulled me close, her arms a shield, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Henry returned moments later, his jaw tight, the hammer still in hand. The man was gone, vanished into the night as if he'd never been there. Henry drove through the village, searching the empty streets, but found no trace of him. We guessed he'd fled through the field, swallowed by the darkness beyond. That night, I didn't sleep. My dreams were haunted by those eyes, replaying the moment he'd watched me, unblinking through the glass. For weeks, nightmares plagued me, waking me with screams, my mind trapped in that basement, his gaze always waiting. Even now, years later, the basement remains a place of dread. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of the bulb, sends a shiver down my spine, a reminder of that night. I can still see him, his face etched into my memory, those dark circles a brand I'll never escape. And though I'll never know who he was or what he wanted, one thing is certain: some shadows never truly leave. The summer night was alive with freedom, the kind that makes your heart race with possibility. But on that empty road, something else raced after me. At 16, I was a boy on the edge of the world, my newly minted moped license a golden ticket, to adventure in the sprawling countryside of Europe. It was early summer, the air warm and fragrant with wildflowers, the sky a canvas of fading gold as the sun dipped below the horizon. My friends and I had spent days exploring on our mopeds, a pack of reckless teens weaving through forgotten paths, our laughter echoing across fields and forests. I felt untouchable, a king of the open road. The moped, a 50cc beast with a chipped, red frame, hummed beneath me, its engine a steady pulse that matched my excitement. For the first couple of days, everything was perfect. Gravel crunching under our tires, the wind whipping through our hair, the world ours to conquer. But that night, as the stars began to pierce the sky, I learned that some roads lead to places you can't escape. It was a warm, golden evening when we set out, the kind where the sunset paints the fields in shades of amber and the air smells of earth and freedom. My friends and I rode through the countryside, our mopeds kicking up dust on narrow gravel roads, the kind that wind through endless fields and sleepy farms, far from the city's hum. We laughed, shouted, raced each other past barns and silos, the world a blur of green and gold. We were alive, untethered, unstoppable. But as the sky deepened to indigo, one by one, my friends peeled off, their headlights fading as they headed home, their voices calling goodnight over the hum of their engines. "Don't stay out too late," one shouted, his words swallowed by the dusk. I waved them off, my heart still racing with the thrill of the ride, my headphones nestled in my ears, music pulsing as I decided to keep going. Just a little longer, I thought. The night too perfect to end. It was probably 1 or 2 in the morning, the world wrapped in a quiet so deep it felt like a living thing, watching, waiting. I turned my moped toward a small village nestled among the fields, its lights faint in the distance, its streets lined with farms where tractors loomed like sleeping giants. I slowed down, cautious of the uneven roads, the gravel crunching softly under my tires, the scent of hay and manure heavy in the air. The village was silent, its houses dark, their windows like closed eyes, the only sound the faint rustle of crops in the breeze. I'm alone now, I realized. A flicker of unease brushing against my excitement, but I pushed it down, the music in my headphones a shield against the stillness. I rode through, the village fading behind me, and turned onto a larger road, its asphalt smooth under my tires, leading to the highway that would take me home. The sun was long gone, the sky a deep, starless black, the darkness pressing in like a physical weight. Almost there, I told myself. My home 30 kilometers away. A distance that felt both close and impossibly far in the dead of night. The highway stretched before me, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the emptiness, its speed limit a daunting 100 kilometers per hour, a rule I shouldn't have broken with my moped, capped at 80 kilometers an hour. But the road was deserted, its lanes wide and empty, the only light the faint glow of my headlamp and the distant shimmer of stars. No one's around, I reasoned, my parents' warnings a distant echo as I pushed the throttle, the engine whining in protest as I sped toward home, desperate to beat the clock before they noticed I'd been out until 3 in the morning. The night was a void, the fields on either side swallowed by shadows, the air cool against my skin, carrying the faint scent of diesel and damp earth. I rode for 15 minutes, the rhythm of the road lulling me into a false sense of safety, my music a steady beat in my ears. Then I saw it, a car parked on the side of the highway, its headlights on, cutting through the dark like a predator's eyes. My stomach twisted, a knot of unease tightening. I pushed the thought away, focusing on the road, my headlamp carving a narrow path through the night. But the image lingered, a seed of fear taking root. A few minutes later, the night shifted. I felt it before I saw it, the weight of being watched. My headlamp caught the glint of metal in my peripheral vision, and I glanced back, my heart skipping a beat. The car from the side of the road was moving, its headlights growing brighter, closer as it sped toward me. It's following me. My moped, sluggish at its max speed, was no match for the car's roar, and within moments it caught up, its engine a low growl that drowned out my music. The car pulled alongside me, its windows dark, reflective, hiding whatever lay within. My pulse thundered, my hands tightening on the handlebars, the road stretching endlessly before me, offering no escape. "Keep going," I commanded myself. But my eyes betrayed me, darting to the car, needing to see, needing to know. And then I saw him. A man, his face illuminated by the dashboard's sickly green glow. His skin smeared with blood, glistening wet in the dim light. His eyes were wild, unhinged, boring into mine with a madness that stopped my breath. He was smiling, a wide, grotesque grin that stretched too far, his teeth stained red, his gaze pinning me like a hunted animal. I couldn't look away. The car rode beside me for what felt like an eternity, though it was only a minute, each second stretching into a nightmare. His smile never wavered, his eyes never blinked, and I felt the weight of his stare, a predator's promise that I was his prey. Blood dripped from his chin, staining his shirt, pooling in the creases of his neck, the scent of iron faint but unmistakable through the open window. What did he do? My mind raced, conjuring images of violence, of someone else's, and on this lonely road. I wanted to scream, to swerve away, but my body was locked. My moped a fragile lifeline I couldn't abandon. Then he moved, his bloodied hand rising slowly, deliberately, to wave goodbye. A mocking gesture that sent a chill down my spine. His other hand lifted, pressing a finger to his lips in a silent gesture, a warning to keep quiet, to keep his secret. My blood turned to ice. The car surged forward, its taillights a fading red as it veered onto a ramp, disappearing down a smaller road. As it turned, I saw it. No license plate, just a blank expanse where one should have been. A final mark of its mystery. I rode on, my heart a frantic drum, the night closing in like a shroud. The highway stretched endlessly, each kilometer a battle against the fear that clung to me. The man's smile burned into my mind, his bloodied face a specter I couldn't shake. Who was he? A killer? A ghost? My mind churned with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. I didn't stop until I reached home. The lights of my house a beacon in the dark, my parents scolding a distant hum against the roar of my fear. That night I lay awake, the man's eyes haunting my every thought, his silent gesture a chain around my voice. Years later, I still see him in my dreams, his blood-soaked smile waiting on that midnight road. I don't ride at night anymore. Don't stray onto highways where the dark holds secrets. And sometimes when I pass a lonely stretch of road, I swear I see a car in the distance, its headlights watching, waiting for me to ride again. The house I grew up in was my mother's sanctuary, a weathered two-story nestled in an English village, where the air carried the scent of damp earth and blooming lavender. Its walls creaked with age, its windows rattled in the wind, and its halls seemed to whisper secrets only the night could hear. I was 10 when the strangeness began, subtle at first, like ripples on a still pond. The kettle in the kitchen would hum to life at midnight, its steam curling through the dark like a specter's sigh. My mother, Clara, dismissed it as old wiring, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a flicker of doubt. She'd linger at the staircase, her hand on the banister as if the house itself was testing her resolve. One night I slipped out of bed to use the bathroom, the hallway bathed in silver moonlight. The air felt heavy, charged with a presence I couldn't name. Halfway down the corridor I froze. At the far end, a figure stood, tall and broad, its silhouette etched against the wall like a stain. No face, no eyes, just a void where features should have been, absorbing the light around. My heart pounded. a scream clawing up my throat. "Run," my mind urged, an embedded command that shook me free. I bolted back to my room, my cry piercing the silence. Clara rushed in, her face pale, but when we checked, the hallway was empty. The air cold and still. "Just a nightmare," she said, but her trembling hands told another story. That night I slept with the light on, the memory of that faceless watcher burning behind my eyes. 4 years later, at 14, the house had become a labyrinth of shadows. My room was a fragile refuge, the door always cracked to let in the hallway's dim glow. One gray morning, just before dawn, I woke to a prickling on my skin, the air thick with an invisible gaze. The world outside was shrouded in fog, the house silent save for the faint creak of settling wood. Something was wrong, a violation of the stillness that made my stomach churn. "Turn around," my mind whispered, a command I couldn't resist. Slowly, I shifted, my breath shallow, and there it was, a faceless silhouette inches from my bed, its form a black wound against the pale walls. No eyes, no mouth, yet it watched, its presence a suffocating weight that pinned me in place. Fear paralyzed me, my body curling into itself, a silent prayer for it to vanish. Time stretched, each second an eternity, until I dared look again. It was gone, the air lighter but tainted, like the aftermath of a storm. I lay awake until sunrise, too terrified to move, the watcher's gaze lingering in my bones. At 15, I fled that house, moving to my grandparents' stone cottage 30 miles away, a haven in a valley of rolling hills and whispering streams. The cottage was warm, its walls lined with family photos, its hearth glowing with stories of simpler times. I thought I'd left the watcher behind, that it was bound to the old house's creaks and shadows, but 2 months in, the illusion shattered. One night, as I lay in my new room, the wooden floor cold beneath a woven rug, a sound pierced the quiet, rapid, bare footsteps racing from my door to the back entrance. They stopped, then started again, a relentless cycle that sent my pulse into a frenzy. "It's just the house," I told myself, but the lie felt hollow. I texted my grandmother, Evelyn, praying it was her or my grandfather. Her reply was a blade. "No one's awake, dear." With their dog barking, she descended the stairs, her steps heavy and deliberate, nothing like the frantic patter I'd heard. A week later, my girlfriend Nora stayed over. As we whispered in the dark, the footsteps returned, sharp and urgent. "Listen," I urged, and her eyes widened, her hand clutching mine in silent terror. We called Evelyn again, and I flung open the door, heart hammering, but found only a cold, empty hallway, the air thick with an unspoken threat. The watcher's reach stretched beyond the cottage. I spent a year in Scotland, the Highlands' vast skies a balm to my frayed nerves, free of its shadow. But when I returned, it was waiting. One evening, as I parked outside with Nora, I glanced at the cottage's front window and saw it, the faceless silhouette, standing motionless, its presence a violation of the home I'd fought to reclaim. My blood turned to ice, my hands fumbling with the keys. Nora's gasp, a mirror of my own fear. Inside, the radio in the living room flared to life, static crackling before a low, tuneless hum filled the air. A voice that wasn't human. My grandfather, Henry, switched it off, muttering about faulty circuits, but his eyes darted to the window, searching for something he wouldn't name. Other moments clawed at my sanity. One night I dreamt of being tickled, laughter turning to dread as the sensation lingered after I woke. I leaned over the bed, peering into the dark, and a blast of air slammed into my face, like a gale from an open car window, stealing my breath. No windows were open, no explanation possible. Another time, alone in the cottage, I felt a pressure on my chest as if the watcher's form was pressing down, its silence a scream only I could hear. Each incident wove a tapestry of terror, a relentless reminder that it was always near. Always watching. My aunt's stories from her youth in the village haunted me, nested tales of a spirit that chose its prey, binding itself to those who'd seen it. "It feeds on your fear," she'd whispered, her voice heavy with warning. "And once it marks you, it never lets go." That story anchors me now, making the watcher feel not just real but eternal, a shadow woven into my very existence. I've searched for answers, scoured old books and questioned locals, but the memories torment me. Those footsteps, that silhouette, that radio's hum. I've tried to convince myself it's my mind, a trick of trauma, but the cold truth remains. It's still here, in the quiet moments, waiting for me to look. Some terrors don't need a face to claim you. They live in the spaces you call home, in the silence you can't escape watching until you're no longer sure what's real. Have you ever watched a neighbor's house, its windows dark as graves, its silence a weight that presses against your chest, and felt it was hiding something unspeakable? That's how it began for me, a whisper of suspicion that grew into a scream I couldn't silence. 3 years ago, I moved into a small suburban street in a town I thought was safe, a place where picket fences and blooming gardens promised a quiet life. But the house across the street, where Tom and his wife Susie lived, was different. A shadow that refused to blend with the sunlight. A secret that turned my sanctuary into a prison. This is the story of the man who watched from his porch, the woman who vanished like a ghost, and the darkness that made me question everything I thought I knew. I'd always craved solitude, a space to breathe after years of city chaos, so when I found the duplex on Maple Lane, it felt like a gift. The street was a postcard of suburban bliss, neighbors waving over morning coffee, kids racing bikes past manicured lawns, the air scented with fresh-cut grass and laughter. But Tom's house was a blemish on the canvas, its paint peeling like old skin, its windows shrouded in curtains that never stirred. I'd see him on his porch, a lanky man in his 40s, his eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses, a joint dangling from his lips like a permanent fixture. He'd nod as I passed, his smile a thin slash, but his gaze lingered too long. A predator's stare cloaked in casual ease. The air around him was heavy, thick with the acrid scent of weed and something darker, something that made my skin prickle. Tom introduced me to Susie just once, on the day I moved in, a moment that replayed in my mind like a broken reel. She stood beside him, a pale woman with hollow cheeks, her eyes fixed on the ground as if it held answers she couldn't find. Her voice was a whisper, barely audible, her frame so frail it seemed the wind might carry her away. She didn't look at me, didn't smile, just turned and slipped back inside, the door closing with a finality that echoed in my bones. That was the last I saw of her for 3 years, her absence a void that grew heavier with each passing day. I'd watch Tom's house from my window, its silence a puzzle that gnawed at my thoughts. Was she still there, hidden behind those curtains? Or had she ever existed? The thought was a seed, sprouting into unease as I noticed the others. Women I didn't recognize coming and going from Tom's house, their visits brief, their faces etched with a tension I couldn't place. 3 years passed, and Susie became a ghost, a name whispered in my mind but never seen. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, imagining her trapped in that house, her voice silenced by walls that seemed to breathe with secrets. The street, once a haven, felt like a stage, each neighbor a player in a drama I didn't understand. I'd watch Tom on his porch day after day, his routine unchanging. Sunglasses, joint, a king on his crumbling throne. But his cars were a riddle, a shifting cast that never stayed the same. A beat-up red Tahoe one day, a shiny truck the next, a van, then a new silver Tahoe, their presence rotating like pieces in a game I couldn't solve. I'd see one parked, then another, their movements a dance with no rhythm, no purpose I could grasp. Then it happened, a moment that turned suspicion into dread. I was pulling into my driveway one evening, the sky bruised with the purples and oranges of dusk, when I saw her. Susie, standing on the lawn, her skin so pale it seemed to glow under the fading light. Her eyes were hollow, her movements jerky, like a marionette with severed strings, her frame so thin I could count the bones beneath her skin. She stood there motionless, a specter in the twilight, her gaze fixed on nothing as if the world had drained her of life. Tom appeared, his face a mask of tension, his hand gripping her arm too tightly, too urgently, as he ushered her inside. The door closed, and the house swallowed her whole, its windows staring back like unblinking eyes, their darkness a promise of something sinister. My stomach twisted, a voice in my head screaming that something was wrong, terribly wrong. Was she sick, trapped, or worse? The image of her haunted me, her pale face a specter in my mind, her hollow eyes pleading for something I couldn't give. I couldn't shake the feeling, couldn't unsee her, so I started watching closer. Tom's cars became my focus, their constant rotation a mystery that gnawed at my sanity. A red Tahoe one day, a van the next, a silver Tahoe, a truck. Never all at once, always shifting, as if he was hiding something in plain sight. I'd sit by my window, notebook in hand, jotting down their comings and goings, my heart pounding with each new entry. One night, under the cover of darkness, I crept closer, my breath shallow, and checked the plates on two of them. The red Tahoe and the van. The numbers didn't match the vehicles, their registrations tied to cars that didn't exist in any database I could find. The discovery was a jolt, a confirmation that Tom's life was a lie, a facade draped over something rotten. I thought of Susie, her frail form, her absence, and imagined her locked in that house, a prisoner in a suburban tomb, her cries muffled by walls that held more than memories. I remembered whispers from the neighbors, stories I'd dismissed as gossip, missing pets, strange noises at night, a woman who'd lived there before Tom, gone without a trace. Mrs. Carter, down the street, had once mentioned a fight, shouting heard through the walls years ago, but no one followed up. No one cared enough to look. Now those whispers felt like warnings, pieces of a puzzle I was too late to solve. I couldn't stay. Silent, couldn't live with the weight of what I knew. Through a friend, I reached a police officer, my voice trembling as I spilled everything. Tom's behavior, Susie's condition, the mismatched plates, the years of silence. His voice was calm, but I heard the edge, the weight of suspicion matching my own, as if he'd heard stories like this before. He suggested a plan. Pull Tom over for the plates next time he left while another officer checked on Susie. I agreed, my heart a drum in my chest, the weight of what I'd started pressing down like a storm. I called for a welfare check, set. For the next day as I left town, my statement recorded over the phone, each word a step closer to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to face. The house across the street watched me as I drove away, its silence a threat, its secrets a blade poised at my throat. Now I wait, miles away, in a hotel room that feels like a cage, for news that hasn't come. The officer promised updates, but the phone stays silent and my mind spirals into an abyss of what-ifs. What if Susie's gone? Her frail body hidden in that house, or worse. What if Tom knows I spoke? I see her face in my dreams, her hollow eyes pleading, her pale hands reaching through the dark, and wake to the fear that I've only scratched the surface of the horror next door. The street I called home is a trap now. The house across the street a monster I can't unsee, its shadow stretching across the miles to find me. I've heard whispers since I left. Neighbors texting about lights in Tom's windows at odd hours, cars that come and go in the night, a tension that spread like a plague. They feel it too, the darkness I uncovered, the fear that something terrible waits behind that door. What is Tom hiding, and will I ever feel safe again? I ask you because I'm lost in this nightmare, do you know? The woods were a sanctuary of shadows, their tangled branches swallowing the world's cruelty. But that night, as we crouched by the reservoir, the darkness turned predator, its gaze fixed on us. I was 16, fleeing a house where my father's drunken rage and his biker gang's leers drove me to hide in a hamper, my heart pounding beneath dirty clothes. When their voices faded, I slipped through my bedroom window, scaling the backyard fence to escape. My best friend, bound by her own family's cruelty, joined me, and together we sought refuge in the forest, unaware that something ancient and hungry waited in its depths. The village we called home was a place of silent complicity, where neighbors turned blind eyes to bruises and shouts. That night, my father's gang had overrun our slab ranch house, their bikes blocking the gate, their laughter ablaze in the dark. I ran 2 blocks to my best friend's, tapping her window with trembling fingers. Her parents were asleep, their own anger dormant, so she climbed out, her eyes mirroring my fear. We didn't speak, just walked, our sneakers crunching on gravel, until the woods enveloped us, their canopy a shield against the world. The reservoir, a concrete basin meant to hold rainwater, lay hidden beyond a hill, its chain-link fence glinting under the moon. We settled on the grass far from the road, her backpack spilling snacks as we whispered about dreams and escape, our voices soft against the night stillness. Have you ever felt a place grow still, as if it's listening to your every breath? 20 minutes passed, our laughter fading, when a sound broke the silence, a rustling from the reservoir's depths, like leaves dragged over stone. We paused, eyes darting to the fence, thinking a deer might have leapt over, a rare but possible intruder. The sound grew louder, not the scamper of an animal but a deliberate scraping, heavy and slow, as if something large moved through the brush. The woods, usually alive with crickets and owls, were silent now, their quiet a warning we didn't heed. Stay calm, I told myself, but my friend's hand tightened on my arm, her breath quickening. The air felt thicker, charged with an unseen presence, and I knew we weren't alone. We gathered our snacks, moving to a crouch, our eyes scanning the reservoir's steep incline, where thin trees and brambles clung to the concrete. There, slumped against the wall, was a figure, a woman, her light dress torn and caked with dirt, her body glistening as if soaked, though no rain had fallen in months. Her hair, long and matted, draped over her face, hiding her features. She needs help, I thought, my heart torn between fear and pity. Are you okay? My friend called, her voice trembling. Do you need help? I added, stepping closer. No response, no movement, just a stillness that felt wrong, as if she wasn't breathing, wasn't human. We whispered options: run, for help, stay, approach. But the silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until the scraping resumed. Sharper now, closer. What do you do when the world reveals a face it shouldn't have? We turned, and she was no longer slumped. She was sprinting, impossibly fast, her hair whipping back to reveal a face that seared into my soul, swollen and dark, with blue lips and milky white eyes. No pupils, just voids. Her mouth opened, a guttural sound tearing through the night. Not a scream, but something older, hungrier. We ran, our legs burning, the reservoir's fence a fading line as we aimed for the streetlight's orange glow. Her footsteps pounded behind us, too close, too heavy, until we crossed the road. The sound vanishing as if swallowed. Gasping, we turned, scanning the fence, expecting her to climb over, but nothing moved. Just some kids pranking us, my friend panted, but her eyes betrayed her fear, and we both knew it wasn't true. Under the streetlights, we caught our breath. The village's quiet, a fragile shield. Don't look back, a voice inside me urged. But I did, and there she was. Standing inside the fence, her form softened by the orange light but no less terrifying. Her head tilted, those white eyes fixed on us, unblinking. I stepped forward, anger masking my fear, thinking she was just a lost soul. A homeless woman playing tricks. "You're a creep for scaring us," I shouted, my shoulders squared. "It's not our fault you're out here." Her stillness unnerved me, but I held my ground, daring her to respond. Then she moved, rushing the fence with unnatural speed. "Run now," my mind screamed, and my friend grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the village. I braced for her to climb, to chase, but she didn't. She passed through the chain link as if it were air, her form flickering like a broken film. A final bone-chilling wail echoed, fading as we sprinted, our feet pounding until we reached her house, collapsing in safety. We never returned to the reservoir, never walked those trails after dark. The woods changed, their silence unnatural, devoid of birds or bugs, as if the woman's presence had poisoned them. Years later, that night is a scar that bleeds anew. I left the village at 18, chasing college, suburbs, then a city, each move a bid to outrun that face. My best friend didn't make it. She passed a few years ago, her absence a wound I carry. Now, in my 30s, I'm packing to leave a house near a lake, my life in boxes. Late one night, moving crates to the garage, I paused by the water's edge, its surface black under the stars. Don't look, I thought, but I did, and there she was, crawling through the mud, her swollen face turned to me, those white eyes gleaming. In a heartbeat she was gone, but my blood ran cold and I fled inside. The door locked tight. I don't know what she is, but she's not bound to that reservoir, not tethered to time or place. My aunt is coming to sage this house, insisting we cleanse the new one before moving in. And I won't argue. The woman's face haunts me, her wail a sound I can't unhear, and I fear she's still out there, waiting for me to step too close to the water's edge again. The darkness wasn't just a lack of light. It was a living thing, thick and suffocating, pressing against me as I stood in the factory's endless void. I was on my second round, my phone's faint glow guiding me through the shadows, when it appeared, a silhouette, human-shaped but impossibly black, darker than the night around it. It hovered before me, silent, unyielding, and before I could react, it surged forward, passing through my chest. A cold unlike anything I'd ever felt gripped me, a soul-deep freeze that tore the breath from my lungs and dropped me to the floor, trembling in its wake. It was 2021, a long holiday weekend that had shuttered the factory where I worked as a security guard. I'd spent years as a private investigator, but occasionally filled in for guard duties when the firm needed extra hands. That weekend, the sprawling industrial complex was a hollow shell, its machines silent, its lights extinguished, the air heavy with an unnatural stillness that seemed to seep into the walls. I was assigned the night shift, a solitary vigil in a place so vast it took an hour and a half to patrol, its corridors twisting into an abyss of shadows. Only the essentials remained on, security cameras whirring silently, A few office lights casting distant glows, alarms ready to sound, the boiler humming faintly in the depths, and the Wi-Fi, a useless lifeline in this sea of darkness. The factory was a void, its pitch-black expanse swallowing every sound, every flicker of hope. I carried a mag light, its beam too weak to pierce the gloom, and my phone, its dim screen my only guide as I scanned barcodes at doors and recorded pressure valve readings. The valves were my focus that night, hidden behind two towering machines. Along a back wall, their dials barely visible in the dark. Two of them sat 10 feet apart, and I couldn't manage both the mag light and my phone while checking them, so I relied on the phone's faint glow to navigate the narrow space. My first round had been uneventful. Doors locked, everything secure. The silence broken only by the distant hum of the boiler and the echo of my own footsteps on the concrete floor. I felt the weight of the emptiness, the factory's vastness, pressing in like a physical force, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the routine. The air was cold, my breath visible in the chill as I started my second round, the darkness growing heavier with each step. I checked the first valve, my fingers steady as I jotted down the reading, and turned to my left, stepping toward the second. That's when I saw it. The shadow stood before me, its form a void against the already impenetrable dark, as if it had been carved from the absence of light itself. It was human height, but shapeless, its edges blurred, absorbing the hue. Faint glow of my phone screen. My heart jolted, a sharp spike of adrenaline coursing through me, my hand trembling as the screen's light danced across the machinery. Feel the cold seeping into you, don't you? The thought wasn't mine, but it slithered into my mind, a whisper of dread as the shadow moved. Fast, too fast, rushing toward me like a wave of night. I had no time to scream, no time to run. It hit me, passing through my chest with a force that felt both weightless and crushing. A frigid, soul-deep chill that burned as much as it froze. My legs buckled, and I collapsed, the concrete floor, biting into my knees, my phone slipping from my grasp to clatter beside me. The cold lingered, a weight in my bones, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps as my vision blurred, the darkness closing in tighter, suffocating me with its presence. Don't know how long I lay there, the factory's silence a mocking shroud around me. My phone's screen still glowed, a faint beacon in the void, its light catching the edges of the machines like a dying star. My heart raced, a frantic 180 beats per minute, my blood pressure plummeting. I'd later learn it had dropped to 74, over 40, a dangerous low that left me dizzy, disoriented, my body trembling uncontrollably. The air felt heavier now, charged with a presence I couldn't see but felt in every fiber of my being, a malice that lingered in the shadows. My fingers, numb and shaking, fumbled for the phone, my voice a broken whisper as I called my boss, Victor. His response was immediate, his voice sharp with concern as he arrived, finding me crumpled on the floor, my face pale, my eyes wide with terror. He called EMS, and Dr. Lena, a paramedic with steady hands and a calm demeanor, checked my vitals, her expression grim as she relayed the numbers. I was rushed to the hospital where I stayed for 2 days, my body slowly recovering but my mind fractured, replaying that moment of cold, that shadow's silent assault. Victor didn't fully believe my story. He thought I'd lost it, and I couldn't blame him. But he knew the factory's history, the whispers of paranormal activity that had driven other guards away. He'd seen me handle crises, a tornado tearing through a town, an active shooter in a crowded mall, a hostage situation with lives on the line, with calm precision. Yet he admitted this had shaken me to my core, a fear he'd never seen in. So before, the factory had a reputation, he told me later. Workers who'd felt watched in the dead of night, machines that moved on their own, shadows that lingered where no shadows should be. I hadn't believed the stories then, dismissing them as superstition, but now they felt like warnings I'd ignored, etched into the very walls of that forsaken place. At 32, I thought I'd seen the worst life could throw at me, but that night rewrote my understanding of fear. The memory of that cold, that shadow, still sends shivers down my spine, a sick twist in my stomach that never fully fades. I can't be in a pitch-black room anymore. The darkness a cruel reminder of what I felt, what I survived. I don't know what it was, a demon, a reaper, an angry spirit. But its malice was undeniable, a force that sought to break me. I know it's still there, lurking in the factory's depths, waiting for the next soul to wander too close, its cold embrace a promise of terror I'll never forget. The factory stood silent, a monolith of steel and shadow, but in its darkness something whispered my name. In 2021, I was 32, a private investigator for a security firm in a small industrial town. My days filled with paperwork and stakeouts, my nights occasionally borrowed for guard duty. I'd never been a skeptic. Ghost stories intrigued me, though I'd never felt their chill myself. But that changed over a long holiday weekend, when I was called to cover night shifts at a sprawling factory on the edge of town. It was supposed to be routine, but routine doesn't leave you broken. The factory was a beast, its corridors stretching like a labyrinth, its machinery silent during the shutdown, every light, every hum powered off except for the essentials, security cameras, office lights, alarms, the boiler's faint rumble, and a flickering Wi-Fi signal that barely reached the far walls. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of oil and metal, the kind of place where echoes lingered too long, where shadows seemed to move just out of sight. I'd heard the rumors, whispers of guards who'd quit after unexplained nights, tales of negative energy that clung to the walls, but I brushed them off, my flashlight a steady companion as I prepared for the shift. The factory was a tomb at night, its vastness swallowing sound, its darkness so absolute it felt alive. A single round took an hour and a half, my boots echoing on the concrete floor, the beam of my mag light slicing through the black like a fragile thread. I carried my cell phone to scan barcodes near the doors, a digital breadcrumb trail to prove I'd been there, and a notepad to record readings from pressure valves on the water risers. Stay focused, I told myself, the weight of the factory pressing against me, its silence a heavy cloak that muffled even my own breath. 2 risers were tucked behind massive machinery along a back wall, 10 feet apart, their dials glinting faintly in the dark. To read them, I had to set down my mag light, relying solely on my phone's weak glow to navigate the narrow gap, the metal cold against my shoulder as I squeezed through. The first round had been uneventful. Doors locked, readings normal. The factory a sleeping giant I thought I could tame. But the second round broke me. I'd just taken the first reading, the numbers scrawled in my notepad, my fingers stiff from the chill, when I turned to my left, ready to step the 10 feet. To the second riser. It appeared without warning, a shadow that shouldn't have been. In the pitch black, where even my phone's light struggled, a form took shape. Human height, but devoid of detail. A void so dark it seemed to drink the surrounding gloom. My breath caught, my heart slamming against my ribs. A primal instinct, screaming that this was wrong. I froze, my mind racing for an explanation. A trick of the light, a piece of machinery I'd missed, but there was nothing, no source, no reason. Move, I urged myself. But before I could, it moved first, lunging toward me with a speed that defied reality, a silent predator in a world of shadows. It passed through me, straight through my chest. The sensation was indescribable, a frigid, thrill-deep cold, as if my very essence had been plunged into an abyss. The chills seeping into my bones, my blood, my thoughts. It was the most horrific feeling I'd ever known, a violation that tore at the core of who I was, leaving me hollow, exposed, raw, my legs buckled, my body collapsing to the concrete floor, the notepad slipping from my hand, my phone's light flickering as if the darkness itself was fighting to snuff it out. I don't know how long I lay there, time slipping like sand through my fingers. The cold lingered, a weight in my chest, my breath coming in shallow gasps, my heart a frantic drum that refused to slow. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers numb, the screen's glow a lifeline in the void. "Call for help," my mind screamed. And somehow I managed to dial my boss, my voice a broken whisper as I begged him to come. He arrived, his flashlight cutting through the dark, his face pale as he found me sprawled on the floor, my eyes wide, with a terror I couldn't name. He called EMS, his voice steady but his eyes uncertain, and as they loaded me onto the stretcher I heard him mutter, "He's not crazy." The factory had a reputation, he later told me. Paranormal activity, negative energy, guards who'd fled after nights they couldn't explain, their careers ending in whispers of madness. My boss knew something had happened, even if he couldn't fully believe it. His trust in me built on years of watching me handle chaos, tornadoes, active shooters, hostage situations, with a calm that never wavered. But this broke me. EMS arrived, their lights a harsh intrusion, their hands quick as they checked my vitals. My heart rate was 180, my blood pressure a terrifying 74/40, numbers that spoke of a body in shock, a system thrown into chaos by something beyond reason. They rushed me to the hospital, the sterile white walls a stark contrast to the factory's darkness, my mind replaying that icy touch, that shadow's silent assault. I stayed for 2 days, hooked to monitors, my body recovering but my mind, trapped in that moment, the cold a memory that refused to fade. What was it, I asked myself, the question a loop in my thoughts. A demon, a reaper, an angry spirit born from the factory's forgotten past? I'd heard the stories, the whispers of workers who died in accidents, of tragedies buried in the factory's history, their pain seeping into the walls, waiting for someone to feel it. My boss visited, his face lined with concern, his words, careful but honest. "I've seen you in crises," he said, his voice low. "You've always been steady. Whatever happened in there, it shook you to your core." He believed something had happened, even if he couldn't name it. Now, at 32, I carry that night like a scar on my soul. The memory of that shadow, its icy grip still sends chills down my spine, a shiver that starts in my chest and spreads like frost. My stomach churns when I think of it, the nausea a physical echo of the terror that night left behind. I can't be in the dark anymore. Not without feeling that presence, that cold waiting to claim me again. I sleep with a light on, my apartment a fortress of illumination, but even that isn't enough. Sometimes in the quiet of my home I swear I feel a draft, a whisper of cold air that shouldn't be. And I'm back on that factory floor, the shadows touch a phantom that never truly leaves. I don't know what it was, but I know it wasn't friendly, and I know it's still there. In that factory, waiting for the next soul to wander into its dark. Mara's flat was a mirror of her soul, beautiful, fractured, and steeped in secrets. I was 24, caught in a whirlwind romance with a woman whose heart was a battlefield of light and shadow. Her Victorian home in Bristol was a labyrinth of contradictions. Heavy velvet curtains draped over chipped window frames, walls adorned with twisted paintings of eyeless figures, and a tattered satanic Bible splayed on her coffee table like a silent provocation. Mara could be radiant, her laughter a warm melody that wrapped around me like a blanket, but her rage was a storm, erupting without warning. Once, during a heated argument, she'd pressed a kitchen knife to my hand, her eyes blazing with a fury I didn't recognize. The blade nicked my skin, leaving a thin scar that throbbed when I thought of her. Yet I stayed, tethered to her warmth, even as her darkness cast a chill I couldn't shake. It was a late November night in 2020, the air sharp with the bite of autumn. The streets outside hushed under a blanket of fog. We were tangled in her bed, the flickering glow of a TV casting blue shadows across the room. Mara's head rested on my shoulder, her breath soft against my neck, the storm in her quiet for now. The taste of cheap red wine lingered on my tongue, dry and bitter, urging me to the kitchen for a drink. I slipped from the bed, my bare feet silent on the creaking floorboards, the house groaning as if reluctant to let me pass. The staircase was a narrow descent into darkness, each step colder than the last, the air growing heavy with the scent of old wood and something acrid, like decay hidden beneath polish. The kitchen was a cavern of shadows, lit only by the faint, amber glow of a stovelight, its hum a low pulse in the silence. The tiles were icy under my feet, the room's edges swallowed by the dark. I opened the fridge, the cold air a sharp contrast to the oppressive warmth, and grabbed a soda, the can's chill anchoring me to the moment. As I closed the door, the light dimmed, the amber glow flickering as if struggling to survive. My heart quickened, a prickle of unease crawling up my spine. Just a faulty bulb, I told myself, but the air had thickened, pressing against my chest, like an unseen hand. I turned to leave, my shadow stretching across the floor, and then I saw it. Not a shadow on the wall, but a figure, standing inches from me. It was tall, formless, a void shaped like a man, its edges bleeding into the darkness. No face, no eyes, yet it watched, its presence a cold, suffocating weight that stole my breath. My body froze, the soda can slipping from my hand to clatter on the tile, the sound swallowed by the room's unnatural silence. "Move!" my mind screamed, an embedded command that jolted me backward, my hip crashing into the counter's edge. The figure didn't stir, didn't fade. It stood, immovable, a sentinel of the night. My pulse roared, my vision narrowing to that single impossible form, its gaze a tangible force that pinned me in place. I stumbled toward the stairs, my legs trembling, the house's creaks now a mocking chorus, as if it delighted in my fear. Upstairs, Mara was awake, her eyes sharp in the TV's glow. I collapsed onto the bed, my voice shaking as I stammered out what I'd seen. "You saw it, didn't you?" she said, her tone eerily calm, a faint smile curling her lips. "The Shadow Man." My stomach twisted, her words a blade that cut through my panic. She spoke of it like an old companion, a fixture in her life, her voice devoid of fear. "It's been here since I was a kid," she said, her fingers brushing the scar on my hand. "It doesn't hurt anyone." But her calm was a lie, a veil, over something darker, and I felt the truth in the way the house seemed to pulse around us, its walls alive with secrets. The Shadow Man wasn't the only visitor. When we fought, Mara's voice sharp and venomous, the house answered. Footsteps echoed from the floor above, heavy and deliberate, pacing in time with our shouts. One night, during a screaming match that left my throat raw, a crash shook the, upstairs bathroom. We climbed the stairs, the air growing colder with each step, and found shampoo bottles and soap scattered across the floor, their tiled shelves untouched. as if flung by an unseen force. Mara's eyes glinted, unfazed, as if the house's rebellion was as familiar as her own rage. I felt it then. The Shadow Man was no mere ghost. It was part of her, woven into the chaos of her heart, a silent partner in her storms. I remembered a story my uncle told me years ago, a nested tale about a house in his village that fed on its owner's anger, birthing a spirit that grew stronger with every fight. "It becomes more than a shadow," he'd said, his voice heavy with warning. "It becomes the house itself." That story anchored me now, making Mara's flat feel not just haunted, but alive, a vessel for the Shadow Man, thriving on our discord. Our relationship crumbled after 8 months, the scar on my hand a map of why I left. But the Shadow Man lingered, its formless gaze a memory that surfaces in quiet moments, a question I can't answer. Was it her, the house, or something older, waiting for me to return? The nights after we parted were no kinder. Alone in my new apartment, I'd wake to the sound of footsteps, faint but unmistakable, pacing just beyond my door. The air would grow heavy, the scent of old wood creeping in, and I'd feel it, those eyeless eyes watching from the dark. I'd check the locks, the windows, but find nothing, only the echo of Mara's voice. "It doesn't hurt anyone." But it did. It hurt me, carving a fear I carry still, a shadow that no light can banish. Some homes don't just hold ghosts. They birth them, weaving your pain into their bones, until the darkness becomes a reflection of the one you thought you loved. It began 3 years ago, in the stillness of a rural home we'd fled to after the city's chaos swallowed us whole. My 2 children, a boy of 6 and a girl of 8, shared a room filled with the innocence of toys and dreams, until something else claimed it. A thing with gray skin and eyes that burned through the dark. A shadow that turned our sanctuary into a nightmare. This is the story of the creature that haunted their nights, the terror that broke our family, and the fear that follows us still. We'd moved to the countryside seeking peace, a desperate escape after my husband's death left a void that echoed in every corner of our old life. The city had been a cage, its noise a constant reminder of loss, its streets a maze where grief hunted us. The house we found was old, its wooden beams etched with the scars of time, its windows rattling in the wind like a restless spirit. It stood at the edge of a forgotten town, surrounded by fields that stretched into the horizon, their silence a balm and a warning. The locals whispered about the place, tales of a family who'd lived here decades ago, their laughter silenced by tragedy, their home left empty until we came. I dismissed the stories, clinging to the hope of a fresh start, but the house felt alive, its walls holding secrets I couldn't touch. My children's room was a haven within this fragile refuge, a space I'd poured my heart into. The walls were painted with stars, a constellation of hope against the dark, their beds a canvas of dreams, my boys a fortress of plastic dinosaurs, my girls a fairy kingdom draped in glittery tulle. A nightlight cast a soft glow, its light a promise of safety, while stuffed animals lined the shelves, silent guardians of their sleep. They'd giggle under the covers, whispering secrets about imaginary worlds, their laughter a melody that soothed the ache in my chest. I'd watch them from the doorway, their small forms curled together, and feel a fleeting peace, a moment where the world was right. But 3 years ago, that peace shattered, replaced by a terror I couldn't explain, a terror that began with their whispers in the dark. It started on a moonless night, the kind where the shadows seemed to breathe, curling around the edges of reality like smoke. I was tucking them in, their small hands clutching mine, when my daughter's voice quivered. "Mommy, there's something in our room." My heart stilled, a cold dread pooling in my chest as my son nodded, his eyes wide with a fear I'd never seen. They spoke in hushed tones, their words tumbling over each other like a flood, describing a creature they'd seen night after night. It was tall and thin, its skin gray as ash, its limbs too long, too bent, as if it had crawled from a place where light never reached. Its eyes were small, black beads that glinted like wet stones, and it moved with a jerking grace. A predator, playing at being human. They said it stood at the foot of their beds, watching, its head tilted as if listening to their dreams, its presence a weight that stole their breath. The creature wasn't always silent. It whispered, its voice a hiss, that slithered through the dark, words they couldn't understand but felt in their bones. Sometimes it hid in the closet, the door creaking open just enough for them to see its eyes peering out. Unblinking, unrelenting, a gaze that pinned them to their beds. But the worst was when it mimicked us, its face shifting like clay, taking on my husband's features, then mine, then theirs. A mockery of love that turned their safe space into a cage. My daughter said it once wore her brother's face, smiling with teeth too sharp, too many, while my son swore it had my eyes, but they were wrong, hollow, as if something had scooped out the soul behind them. Each night it returned, a shadow that fed on their fear, a presence I couldn't see but felt in the air, heavy and wrong like a storm waiting to break. I checked their room that first night, my flashlight cutting through the dark, my voice steady to hide the tremor in my hands. The closet was empty, the space under the beds clear, the nightlight glowing softly, a frail shield against the unknown. But the air was thick, a weight pressing against my skin, as if something had just left, its echo lingering in the shadows, like a bad dream. I told them it was a nightmare, a trick of the dark, and tucked them in tighter, their small bodies trembling against mine. I stayed until they slept, my hand stroking their hair, but my eyes darted to every corner, searching for something I couldn't name. I wanted to believe them, but I couldn't. Not yet. I'd lost too much to believe in monsters, to let fear take root again after burying my grief so deep. But the creature came back night after night, its presence a stain on our home that wouldn't wash away. They'd wake screaming, their voices raw, their descriptions never wavering. Gray skin, black eyes, a smile that wasn't a smile. They said it whispered their names, its voice a blade that cut through their dreams, and sometimes it reached out, its long fingers brushing the air above their beds, so close they felt its cold. I searched again, tearing apart the room, checking every inch, but found nothing. No footprints, no marks, just the lingering scent of damp earth, as if something had crawled from the ground beneath us. I started sleeping in their room, my body, a shield between them and the dark, but I felt it too. A presence that watched, waited, its gaze a weight on my soul that grew heavier with each night. One night I saw it, or thought I did. I woke to their cries, my daughter pointing at the closet, her face pale with terror, her brother sobbing into his pillow. The door was ajar, a sliver of darkness within, and for a moment I saw them, two small, glinting eyes black as coal, staring back, their light a promise of something ancient, something hungry. I lunged forward, flashlight in hand, my scream caught in my throat. But the closet was empty, the air cold, the scent of earth stronger than ever, a stench that clung to my skin like a curse. My children clung to me, their sobs a chorus of fear, and I knew then that this was no dream, no trick of the mind. The creature was real, a thing that defied reason, a shadow that had chosen our home, our family, to haunt. I tried everything, to banish it, prayers whispered in the dark, Sage burned until the smoke stung our eyes. A priest who blessed the house with trembling hands, his voice faltering as he felt the air grow heavy. But nothing worked. The creature adapted, its eyes changing with each visit, sometimes glowing red like embers, sometimes yellow like a predator's gaze, as if it fed on our fear, growing stronger with each scream. It mimicked my husband's voice once, calling my name from the closet, a sound that broke me, tearing open the grief I'd buried. His memory twisted into something vile. I moved their beds into my room, desperate to keep them close, but the whispers followed, faint but unyielding, a promise that it would never leave, its voice a thread that wove through our dreams. I sought answers, digging into the houses, history, the town's secrets, anything to explain the thing that hunted us. The locals spoke of a creature in the fields, a gray shadow seen by farmers decades ago, a thing that stole children's laughter and left families broken. They called it the Gray Whisperer, a legend born from tragedy, tied to a family who'd lived in our house, their youngest lost to the fields one winter night. Stories chilled me, but they offered no solution, only a name for the terror that stalked us. I tried to fight, to protect my children, but each night was a battle. Their screams a reminder of my failure, their small hands clutching mine, as if I could save them from the dark. We stayed in that house for another year, the creature a constant shadow, its presence a weight we couldn't escape. I stopped sleeping, my nights spent watching their door, a knife under my pillow, my mind fraying with each whisper I heard. My children changed, their laughter gone, their eyes hollow, their once bright spirits dimmed by a fear that clung like a second skin. We fled in the end, leaving everything behind. Toys, clothes, memories, anything to escape the thing that wouldn't let us go. But the fear came with us, a scar on our souls, a shadow that followed us to our new home, its whispers echoing, the dark. Now, 3 years later, my children still wake in the night, their eyes searching the shadows, their voices trembling with the same question. Mommy, is it here? I check the closets, the corners, my heart pounding, because I feel it too. A presence that lingers, a shadow that knows our names, its gaze a weight that never lifts. The house we left stands empty, its windows dark, but the neighbors whisper of lights in the night, of a tall gray figure standing in the yard, its eyes glinting in the moonlight. I've searched for answers, scouring old books, speaking to elders, but the Gray Whisperer remains a mystery, a terror tied to our blood. I dream of my husband's voice, twisted by that thing, and wake to my children's screams, their fear a mirror of my own. What was that creature, and why did it choose us? I ask you, because I'm lost in this nightmare. Do you know? The apartment exhaled secrets with every breath of its ancient air, its warped floors and towering ceilings cradling shadows that seemed to know my name. I moved in a year ago, trading the chaos of shared houses for the solitude of this old building, unaware of the weight that clung to its walls. The landlord, a man with a voice like gravel, led me through the faded rooms, his eyes avoiding the hallway's end where a red door stood, its paint vivid against the peeling beige. That stays locked, he said, his tone a blade. It's not part of your lease. I nodded, brushing it off as storage, but the door's presence was a pulse in the silence, a heartbeat I couldn't ignore. The building was a relic, its high ceilings draped in cobwebs, its hardwood floors scarred by decades of footsteps. I spent my first days unpacking, my boxes spilling books and dishes, claiming the space as my own. The city's hum seeped through the windows, a comforting drone, but the apartment held a stillness that felt alive, watchful. Have you ever stepped into a room and felt it staring back, its walls whispering your secrets? That first night, as I drifted toward sleep, a voice shattered the quiet. A woman's voice, soft yet sharp, calling my name with a clarity that jolted me upright. My heart hammered, the darkness thick around me. I lived alone. No neighbors, close enough for sound to bleed through. I flicked on the lamp, its light harsh, and searched every corner. Closets, kitchen, even the absurd space beneath the bed. Nothing. The apartment was empty, but the air was heavy, charged with an unseen gaze. I told myself it was a dream, a trick of exhaustion. But the voice's echo lingered, its source somewhere beyond the walls. The next night it returned, that same voice, gentle yet insistent, calling my name from the hallway's depths. I lay, frozen, my breath shallow, my eyes tracing the sound to the red door, its crimson surface gleaming in the moonlight that slipped through the blinds. "Don't move," a thought commanded. But my body betrayed me, my feet carrying me to the hallway. The door stood silent, its lock unyielding, but the air around it was wrong. Thick, sweet, like the ghost of perfume left by someone long gone. I backed away, my skin prickling, and spent the night with the lights on, my mind spinning through excuses. Old pipes, a neighbor's TV, a hallucination. None held. The voice was personal, intimate, as if it had reached inside me, pulling my name from a place I didn't know existed. Fear weaves itself into the mundane, turning every shadow into a threat. Days later, as I stirred a pot in the kitchen, footsteps echoed from the hallway, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing just beyond the doorframe. My knife froze mid-chop, my pulse a drum in my ears. I gripped the handle, stepping into the corridor, but it was empty. The red doors gleamed, the only movement. The air was heavy, laced with that same sweet scent, now cloying, suffocating. I started noticing disruptions. My keys on the counter instead of the hook. The thermostat dialed to freezing when I'd set it warm. A glass left on the table when I swore I'd washed it. Each was small, dismissible, but together they wove. A net of unease tightening with every passing day. One night I woke to a presence. A weight at the foot of my bed, invisible but palpable, like eyes boring into me. My skin crawled. My breath caught in my throat and I lay still, staring at the ceiling, praying for the feeling to pass. It didn't. The darkness pulsed, alive with intent, and I felt her, because I knew it was her, watching, waiting. Stay still, I told myself. Don't let her know you feel her. Morning brought no relief, only a discovery that turned my blood cold. A handprint on the red door, smudged and small, its fingers too delicate to be mine, its edges faint as if pressed by someone not fully of this world. I scrubbed it away, my hands shaking, but the door's surface seemed to hum, its lock a silent challenge I didn't dare meet. I called the landlord, my voice unsteady, demanding answers about the door. His tone was curt, defensive, insisting. It was storage, nothing more, but he faltered, mentioning a previous tenant, a woman who'd vanished, leaving her life behind. She's still here, I thought, the voice's echo now a scream in my mind. I avoided the hallway after dark, kept every light burning, but the apartment fought back, its walls closing in. What do you do when your sanctuary becomes a cage? One evening, as the TV flickered with a sitcom's laugh track, a shadow darted across the living room, low and swift, like someone crawling on hands and knees. My heart slammed against my ribs, my fingers fumbling for the remote as I flooded the room with light. Nothing, no trace, but the air was thick, heavy with that sweet, sickly scent, and I knew she'd been there. Her presence seeping from the red door's locked heart, The apartment became a battlefield, each night a test of endurance. The voice grew bolder, calling my name in the quiet hours, sometimes from the kitchen, sometimes inches from my ear. Footsteps paced the hallway, relentless, their rhythm a taunt. I stopped sleeping, my eyes hollow in the mirror, my body wired with fear. I lasted 3 months before I broke, packing in a frenzy, my hands trembling as I sealed boxes. Before I left, I pried into the building's past, cornering a neighbor who spoke in whispers of a death. A woman, alone, found too late in the apartment, her story buried in the walls. No details, but the truth was a weight I couldn't shake. She wanted something, I realized. Her voice not just a haunt but a claim, a demand locked behind that red door, reaching for me. Years later in a new city, her echo lingers, a splinter in my soul. I've traded apartments for a house. It's modern, lines a shield against the past. But some nights I wake, heart racing, certain I hear her call my name, soft and clear, from a place I can't find. I avoid old buildings now, their creaking floors and locked doors too close to that red room, where something still waits, its voice a thread I can't cut. I don't know what she sought, but I feel her still, her presence a shadow that follows me, whispering through the silence of every new home. I stood on the 3rd step from the top, the basement door just within reach when I felt it, a sharp tug at my scalp, as if an invisible hand had grabbed my hair and yanked. My breath caught, my body freezing in the dim light of the flickering bulb above. The air turned cold, heavy with a presence I couldn't see, and in that moment I knew I wasn't alone on those creaking stairs. Something was there, something that didn't belong in the world of the living, and it had touched. It was nearly 20 years ago, back when I was 15, in a small Midwest town where time seemed to stand still. Our town was a patchwork of old houses, their weathered facades hiding stories of generations past, and I'd grown up hearing whispers of hauntings, though I never put much stock in them. I wasn't religious, and I found it hard to believe in ghosts, but I loved the thrill of a good ghost story, the way they danced on the edge of possibility. That weekend, my parents, Daniel and Margaret, dragged me to an open house across town, a massive 2-story farmhouse built in 1840, set far back on a sprawling 5-acre property. The land was a tangle of ancient trees and overgrown plants, their shadows stretching long in the late afternoon sun. The grounds were decently maintained, but the house itself hadn't been lived in for years. It wasn't falling apart, not exactly. Its walls still stood strong, its windows intact. But it needed work, a fixer-upper with a charm that drew us in despite its age. The wraparound porch creaked under our steps, and the air carried the scent of damp wood and earth, a promise of history waiting inside. We stepped through the front door, joining 4 or 5 other groups touring the house, their murmurs a soft hum in the cavernous space. But despite the chatter, the house was eerily quiet, as if it swallowed sound, its walls holding their breath. We started upstairs, climbing a grand staircase with a banister worn smooth by time. The upper floor was a maze of rooms, their wallpaper peeling, their windows letting in slanted beams of light that danced with dust motes. But something felt off, an odd vibe that settled in my chest, making my head spin. I felt dizzy, claustrophobic, even though the house was massive, its ceilings high and its spaces wide. The air was heavy, thick with an unseen weight, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that something watched from the shadows of those empty rooms. I wanted to leave, the unease growing with each step, compounded by the Sight of cracked plaster and sagging floors that whispered of the work this place would demand. But I was just along for the ride, so I followed my parents back downstairs to the main level, where the atmosphere lightened, the strange pressure easing as we explored the living room and kitchen. The kitchen was bright, its windows overlooking the overgrown lawn, but the real estate agent ushered us toward a door in the corner. A narrow portal to the basement, the kind of basement you'd expect from a house built in 1840. A bare bulb hung by a fraying cord above the stairs, its light weak and flickering, casting jagged shadows on the unfinished walls. The floor was packed dirt, uneven and cold, the air thick with the scent of mildew and decay, cobwebs draped like curtains, and old wiring snaked along the beams, a testament to the house's age. I'd seen enough horror movies to know this was the kind of place where things went wrong, where shadows moved on their own. And as we descended as a group, I felt that same unease return, sharper now, prickling at my skin. I wanted out, my nerves frayed by the oppressive atmosphere, but I stayed, trailing at the back as we looked around, finding little more than dust and forgotten relics of the past. We finally headed back up, the group lingering in the kitchen as I climbed the stairs last, my steps slow on the creaking wood. The bulb above buzzed, its light dimming for a moment, and I paused on the third step from the top, waiting for the others to move. That's when it happened. The tug, sharp and deliberate, right at the center of my head. My hair was short, barely long enough to grab, but the sensation was unmistakable. A firm yank that sent a jolt of fear through me. Feel the tug at your scalp, don't you? The thought came unbidden. A whisper in my mind as my heart raced, my breath hitching. I spun around, expecting to see a prankster, a loose nail, anything. But there was nothing. Just the empty stairs and the dirt floor below. My eyes darted to the wall, searching for something my hair might have caught on, but the only thing nearby was a wall-mounted fire extinguisher, too far to touch. Panic surged, and I bolted up the remaining steps, bursting into the kitchen, my parents following close behind. In the car, I spilled the story, my voice shaking as I described the tug, the cold, the feeling of being watched. They listened, their faces a mix of concern and skepticism. But we've talked about it over the years, always in a wasn't that strange sort of way. My favorite ghost story because it's the only one I've lived through. The house was sold not long after, its front lawn and trees bulldozed to make way for an Italian restaurant, though the farmhouse itself remained, a silent sentinel at the back of the property. I'd largely forgotten the incident by the time I went to college. 4 years later, the memory dulled by time and distance. But then my mother called, her voice trembling with excitement, saying she had to share something. She'd been at a hair appointment with her stylist, Sophie, when the topic of the restaurant and the old house came up. Sophie mentioned a rumor, an older female spirit, they said, who haunted the farmhouse, known to mess with people, especially men, on the basement stairs. She'd shared this without knowing my story, without any hint from my mother, who then told her about my experience. The coincidence sent chills down my spine, a shiver I feel even now as I recount this. The house still stands, the restaurant still thriving, and part of me wants to go back, to face that stare again. But a wiser part knows better. I want nothing more to do with whatever lingers in that basement, waiting to pull at the next unwary soul. The Alaskan wilderness stretched endless before me, a cathedral of silence and stars, but beneath its beauty, something ancient stirred, and it knew I was there. I've been a hunter my entire life, the backcountry of Alaska my second home, its rugged expanse around Seward a map I thought I knew by heart. I've tracked bear, moose, and elk through its untamed depths, my boots leaving prints in snow and mud, my rifle a steady weight on my shoulder. I thought I was the predator, but that night, I became the prey. In early fall of 2017, I set out on a solo moose hunt, venturing 25 miles from the nearest road, a journey that took me deep into the wilderness where the world felt untouched by time. I pitched a small camp beside a river, its waters a silver ribbon under the fading light, my tent a fragile shield against the vastness. My gear was sparse, a rifle, a week's worth of food, a fire pit I'd dug with my hands, the earth cold and damp beneath my fingers. For 2 days I scouted, tracking moose through thickets of pine and alder, their hoofprints faint in the moss, but luck eluded me, the forest keeping its secrets close. On the third night, I sat by my fire, its flames, a warm glow against the encroaching dark, the scent of burning pine mingling with the crisp air. The river murmured nearby, its voice a soft lullaby, the stars above a glittering canopy that stretched into infinity. I was alone, but not lonely, the peace of the wilderness, a balm to my soul. I cooked dinner over the flames, a simple meal of dried meat and beans, the crackle of the fire a comforting rhythm as I took in the scenery, the trees silhouettes against the sky, the bushes rustling faintly in the breeze, the water's surface catching the firelight like a mirror. It was around 10 at night, the hour when the wilderness feels most alive, most untouched, and I was ready to turn in, my body tired from days of tracking, my mind lulled by the quiet. Then it came, a sound that shattered the stillness, a deep roar that wasn't of this world. It was guttural, animalistic, a primal noise that seemed to rise from the earth itself, echoing from everywhere and nowhere, its vibrations sinking into my bones. I froze, my spoon halfway to my mouth, my heart slamming against my ribs, a chill racing down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. "Get the rifle," my instinct screamed, and I dropped my meal, the tin clattering to the ground as I lunged for my weapon, its cold metal a lifeline in my hands. I scanned the camp, my eyes darting from the river to the trees, the bushes to the shadows beyond, the fire's glow casting flickering shapes that danced like specters. Nothing, no moose, no bear, no wolf, just the endless dark, the wilderness, staring back with unseen eyes. But I felt it, a weight on my skin, a presence that wasn't animal. It was the kind of feeling that strips you bare, that tells you you're not alone, that something is watching, waiting. Its gaze a physical thing that pressed against me. I doused the fire, the embers hissing as they died, plunging the camp into darkness, my rifle ready, my breath shallow as I sat in the black, listening, waiting. "Stay alert," I told myself, the silence now a predator, its claws in the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the whisper of the wind through the pines. An hour passed, each minute an eternity. My senses stretched taut, my hands trembling on the rifle's grip. Then it came again, closer, and my blood turned to ice. The roar erupted, nearer now, its deep guttural tone a blade that sliced through the night. So close I felt its vibration in my chest, a sound that no creature I knew could make. My spine tingled, my breath caught, the chill of fear wrapping around me like a shroud. I stayed up all night, too terrified to sleep, my rifle a fragile shield against the unknown, my eyes straining against the dark, searching for a shape, a movement, anything to explain the sound. What was out there? The question looped in my mind, a relentless echo, my imagination conjuring horrors. Bears, wolves, something worse, something not of this world. When dawn finally broke, its pale light creeping through the trees, I felt a flicker of safety. The sun, a guardian that chased the shadows away. But the fear lingered, a weight in my gut, an edge to my every movement. I'm done, I decided, packing up camp with shaking hands, the tent collapsing under my hurried fingers, my gear stuffed into my pack as I prepared to leave, cutting my trip short. The wilderness no longer a sanctuary, but a threat. I trekked back toward the road. The 25 miles a grueling march, my rifle slung over my shoulder, my senses on high alert, every rustle of leaves a potential threat, every shadow a lurking presence. 10 miles from my camp, I crossed paths with another hunter, his weathered face etched with the lines of a man who'd seen the wild secrets. I told him what I'd experienced, the roar, the feeling of being watched, the terror that had kept me awake. His eyes darkened, his jaw tightening, a look of recognition. I'll never forget. He nodded, his voice low, and said he'd heard something similar a few years back. In that same stretch of forest, a deep, unearthly sound that had chilled him to his core. He'd seen something too, a large, shadowy figure watching him from a ridge, its outline blurred, its presence wrong, as if it didn't belong to this world. He hadn't returned to that spot since, and neither have I. That roar, that gaze, it broke something in me. Years later, the memory still haunts me, a specter that refuses to fade. I still hunt, the call of the wild too strong to ignore, but I avoid that area like a cursed land. Its rivers and ridges a boundary I'll never cross again. I never go alone anymore. The solitude I once craved, now a door I won't open. The fear of what might be waiting too great. What was out there? A bear, a wolf, or something older, something that doesn't bleed, doesn't die. The other hunter's words echo in my mind, his shadowy figure a phantom that joins the roar in my nightmares. Sometimes, in the quiet of my home, I swear I hear a faint echo, a deep rumble carried on the wind, and I'm back in that camp, the darkness watching, waiting for me to return. Halloween night in 2017 was a blur of laughter and sugar highs in our small suburban neighborhood. I was 22, living with my mother Diane, in a cozy house on a street alive with trick-or-treaters. Our porch glowed with carved pumpkins, their flickering grins casting shadows that danced in the October chill. 5 dogs, our chaotic, loyal pack, sprawled across the living room, their snores a comforting hum. Coco, my brother's German Shepherd Husky mix, was the sharpest, her amber eyes reading us like an open book. By 9 p.m., our candy bowl was empty, the last costumed kids trailing away. Diane taped a "no more candy" sign to the door, and we retreated to our beds, the house settling into a quiet that felt almost sacred. The air was crisp, heavy with the scent of fallen leaves and burnt pumpkin spice. My room was a haven of soft blankets and dim lamplight, the world outside muffled by the hum of a box fan. I drifted toward sleep, the dog's gentle breathing a lullaby, when a sharp chime cut through the dark, the doorbell, insistent and out of place at 11:30 p.m. My eyes snapped open, heart lurching. Who's out there, I thought, the question a spark of unease. Diane's footsteps echoed from her room, quick and wary, but I was faster, my bare feet hitting the cold hard wood as I rushed to the door. The screen door's large window revealed nothing but darkness, the main door's solid wood a blind barrier. Check first, my mind urged, an embedded command drowned by impulse. I swung the door open, trusting the night's innocence, and froze. 2 figures stood on the porch, cloaked in black hoodies and sweats, their faces shadowed, their forms hulking in the dim streetlight. The air turned thick, charged with a menace I could taste like metal on my tongue. Coco was at my side in an instant, her hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from her chest. Diane appeared behind me, her silhouette tense in the hallways. "Duri, can I help you?" she demanded, her voice a blade, sharp and unyielding. The figures shifted, their silence deafening, and Coco lunged, her teeth bared, slamming against the screen door. It creaked open slightly, unsecured, and the strangers stepped back, their movements jerky, as if startled by her ferocity. "Trick or treat," one mumbled, his voice flat, a mockery of the night's spirit. Diane's eyes narrowed. "Don't you see the sign? We're out of candy." Her words were ice, a dismissal that brooked no argument. The figures hesitated, then turned, melting into the night, their footsteps swallowed by the fog. I slammed the door shut, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the lock, the weight of what could have been settling like a stone in my gut. Diane's face was pale, her breath uneven, but Coco's growls had faded, her eyes still fixed on the door. We sat in the living room, the dogs clustering around us, their warmth a fragile shield. "That wasn't right," Diane whispered, her voice barely audible over the fan's hum. I nodded, my mind racing with images of what might have happened. If Coco hadn't lunged, if I'd opened the screen door, if Diane hadn't been there. The house, our sanctuary, felt exposed, its walls too thin to hold back the world's dangers. 15 minutes later, my husband James came home from his late shift, his face weary but softening as he saw us. We recounted the night, our voices overlapping, Coco's bravery the heart of the story. James's eyes darkened, his hand tightening around his coffee mug. "You're lucky," he said, his voice low, and I felt the truth in his words. A cold truth that lingered like the fog outside. The next morning, the news hit us like a blow. A local channel reported a robbery gone wrong, just blocks away. Two men matching the description of our midnight visitors, black hoodies, black sweats, had tried to break into an off-duty police officer's home. Shots were fired, and both were killed, their bodies sprawled on a stranger's lawn. The time of the incident? 12:01 a.m., 30 minutes after they'd stood on our porch. My stomach churned, the room spinning as I realized how close we'd come to being their target. Coco's growl, Diane's voice, the flimsy screen door. They'd been our salvation, a fragile line between safety and catastrophe. I remembered a story my neighbor told me years ago, a nested tale about a Halloween night when her dog sensed danger before anyone else, saving her from intruders. "Animals know," she'd said, her eyes distant. "They see what we can't." That story anchored me now, making Coco's reaction feel not just instinctual, but otherworldly, as if she'd sensed a darkness we were too human to perceive. The memory of those figures, their silent menace, haunts me still, woven into the fabric of that night. Our house hasn't felt the same since. Every creak, every shadow carries a whisper of that encounter. Coco, now grayer, still watches the door, her eyes sharp, as if she knows the night could bring them back. I lock the doors twice now, check the windows, and keep the dogs close. But the fear remains, a reminder that safety is an illusion, easily shattered by a knock in the dark. Some dangers don't need to speak to terrify you. They stand on your doorstep, cloaked in the ordinary, waiting for you to open the door. The night was a tapestry of shadows, woven with the flicker of candles I'd arranged in a circle, their flames trembling as if they sensed the presence I was summoning. I'd been drawn to the occult since my teenage years, collecting crystals, enchanting rituals from dog-eared books, chasing a connection to something vast and unseen. But a year ago, as I knelt in my backyard under a starless sky, scattering herbs and whispering to a spirit I thought was my guide, I opened a door I couldn't close, a door to a wolf with eyes like burning coals, its voice seeping into my dreams, calling my name from a realm I can't escape. My apartment was a cluttered haven, its shelves brimming with quartz, sage, and books on witchcraft, a sanctuary where I crafted my world. I'd spent years dabbling in the esoteric, spells scribbled from online forums, meditations under candlelight. But nothing prepared me for the dreams that came after a moonlit ritual. Have you ever woken from a dream so vivid it feels like a memory carved into your bones? In the first, I stood in a forest, its trees clawing at a silver sky, and there she was, a wolf, her fur shimmering like moonlight, her gaze piercing me with a presence that wasn't animal. She spoke, her voice a low, resonant hum, saying, "I am Jenny, your guide." I woke gasping, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and musk, her name echoing in my skull. The dream was no fleeting vision. It was a meeting, a crossing, as if she'd stepped into my soul. I was spellbound, convinced Jenny was a spirit guide, a beacon in the chaos of my life. I poured my devotion into a ritual to honor her, arranging candles in my backyard, their flames dancing under the weight of my whispers. I scattered herbs, lavender, rosemary, sage, under a sky that felt too heavy, too close, and spoke her name like a prayer, inviting her closer. What do you do when awe turns to dread, when the sacred becomes a snare? The first sign came days later, when I returned home to find my books rearranged, not strewn but meticulously aligned, their titles facing me like eyes. The lights flickered at night, a restless pulse though the wiring was sound. One evening, as I sat reading, a cold breeze grazed my neck, sharp and deliberate though every window was locked. The air grew dense, laced with a scent of wet fur and soil, and I felt her, Jenny, watching from the shadows, her presence a weight that pressed against my chest. The apartment became her domain, its walls humming with her will. My sister, staying with me for a few weeks, fell under her sway. She'd never sleepwalked before, but one night I found her in the living room, her small frame rigid by the window, staring into the void. "The wolf is here," she whispered, her voice hollow, unfamiliar. "It wants to play." My heart seized. She knew nothing of Jenny, nothing of my rituals. "Don't look outside," I commanded myself, but my eyes betrayed me, scanning the blackness beyond the glass. The next night, a scratching woke me, sharp and rhythmic, like claws carving into wood. I peered through the window, my breath fogging the pain, and saw her, a shadow crouching low, eyes glowing like embers, their light searing through me. She vanished in an instant, but the air vibrated with her presence, a vow that she was never. Far dreams can bind you tighter than chains when they carry a will that's not your own. Jenny's dreams grew vivid, her silver fur brushing my skin as she spoke, her voice no longer gentle but commanding. "Leave offerings," she demanded, her eyes burning like twin flames. "Walk into the woods at night." I resisted, fear eclipsing my fascination. But her dreams were relentless, her gaze a fire that scorched my sleep. My sister's Mongdu worsened, her whispers of the wolf echoing Jenny's commands. One night, I woke to find her at the back door, her hand twisting the knob, eyes glazed as if drawn by an unseen thread. I pulled her back, my hands trembling, knowing Jenny was weaving through her, testing my resolve. The apartment pulsed with her, lights dimming, shadows lengthening, the scent of earth clinging to every surface, a reminder that she was here, always here. I stopped the rituals, desperate to break her hold, but Jenny clung tighter. The books shifted nightly, their pages opened to passages I hadn't read. The air grew heavy, thick with her musk, and I felt her eyes in every corner, unblinking, unrelenting. My aunt, steeped in spiritual lore, came with sage and prayers, her face etched with worry. "You opened a door," she said, her voice low, and something walked through. The cleansing dulled the apartment's hum, the air lighter for a moment, but Jenny lingered, her presence a whisper in the quiet, a claw tapping at the edge of my mind. Years later, she's a shadow that never fades. I've moved to a new place, its clean lines a shield against the past. But the dreams still come, less frequent but searing. Jenny's voice is a blade urging me to the woods, her eyes a promise of something I can't name. I wake shaking, the scent of fur in my lungs, my sister's words a haunting refrain. It wants to play. I don't know if Jenny is a guide or a hunter, but I feel her waiting, her gaze fixed on me, ready to pull me back into her endless forest.